I'm John David Birdall,
And I'm Zach Coleman.
and this is Comic Space, the only place in the whole galaxy where you can tune in, where you can geek out, and where you can learn something new about comics every week.
Hello, friends and comic book readers. This is Zach Coleman along with John Birdall. The ever dapper, the ever charming.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
A lot of work into how I look, and
And it is well appreciated, even though I see you and you can't see me at this point. But I just want you to know that you are a very handsome man. And today, what are we talking about today? We're talking about the less known but still highly appreciated indie comics, the ones that aren't in the mainstream zeitgeist, the ones that might have slipped past. We thought it'd be great to put a spotlight on them and give some appreciation to the lesser known ones, at least the personal ones that I've read, that I get into just from a break in the the DC Marvel cycle, for better or worse, the endless loop of the story changes and then goes back around to the same status quo. That sometimes happens with more of the mainstream comics. I mean, let's face it, Peter Parker isn't going to be getting any older anytime soon, so
and that's what I was thinking. Yeah, certain characters just can't go away.
I just
too much. Right?
It happens. I'm not saying that change doesn't happen. I mean, you look at Superman and Batman. I mean, Robin's been able to grow up and become Nightwing, and now we're on the fourth Robin, who actually is because you had
Wayne,
Dick Grayson,
okay,
you had Jason Todd, you had Tim Drake, and now we have Damian Wayne, who is actually his son. So now it's our fourth one. And then you get like certain characters like Superman, who has his own family, his own son, who is also now a teenager when he was just a child. So, not to say that change doesn't happen,
sure,
but it's a very long process. Very long process. So with indie comics, you sort of have this allowed to change, allowed to develop. In certain cases where you don't necessarily get that, and you also have more freedom in your storytelling. Where if you were to go to talk to Marvel, go to work for them, the question is going, or the statement's going to be, you work with our characters. If you have some new characters you want to bring in, unless you're someone like Brian Michael Bendis, they're not really going to be interested in that. You kind of have to work within their toys, their sandbox. Yeah. So, I mean, you can make up some characters. Again, Brian Michael Bendis comes to mind. He's been able to develop some of his own unique characters. Paul Dini is another one. He created Harley Quinn within the Batman animated series and has now become a staple. So sometimes you can get away with it, but it almost seems like you have to have a name for, or you have to have proven yourself. Am I right in that estimation?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's my goodness. I was just looking up, not to evade your question. It's like, you have to have some sort of clout, or you have to have, really proved that, you can create something that's really going to resonate, create a character or create some sort of scenario that's going to resonate, or really that's going to touch people. And Paul Dini did that. And now, it's like Harley Quinn. We see more Harley Quinn than Joker, which I do believe is a good idea anyway.
Yeah, and speaking of developing, she's been allowed to develop. She's been allowed to develop outside the abusive relationship with the Joker, and who now Joker has a new henchwoman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Punch Out. This happened just within like last year or so.
My goodness, yeah. I haven't been reading too many of. You were talking about mainstream. We're talking about mainstream and indie comics.
Yeah.
I've been working so much on the limited comic series that I was supposed to be working on that I wasn't reading too much, and it's probably the same for you. I know you've been reading some, but
yeah, it's selective. And I've had other people talk about this as well. It's like you have a certain amount of time, and you get very, very selective. Brian Michael Bendis, not the name drop, and
ooh, I mean, you.
I
have talked to the person. Talk about the person.
Yes. But yes, he was very much the same way. It's like, look, I have only so much time to read things and stuff like that, so I'm going to, not waste it. So yeah, with me, it was very much, selecting my kind of reading material, and I try to stay up to date as much as I can, even if it's just reading like a synopsis, just to see, hey, where are these characters now? Where are they going? What have I missed? Sure. So, and now it gets to the point where, at least in my life, I can't keep up with, the month-long stuff.
Yeah.
The month issues or whatever.
Monthly
so
one?
I just wait until like the graphic novel, so it's a complete story, and then I read it in that limited time I have. And that seems to be working out better for me now.
Well, that's good.
With my schedule. But yes, so yeah, with indie comics, you get that sort of freedom that you may not get with sort of the mainstream stuff, and you get to develop your own stories, your own characters, allow them to essentially play out the way you want them to play out. I mean, if you want to go this one direction and you're choosing like Spider-Man, it's like, well, we don't think that this character would go this way, or we think he should go into this other way, or we did this already. And that's another problem with the mainstream comic books. It's like when you're dealing with the same character again and again and again, it's like you kind of run into that rut of how do we make this same story different? So with indie comics, there is sort of a break from the mainstream tradition. And I thought it'd be great to go through some, at least my personal favorites.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just about to ask about some of them, but you had already told me about some of them. But it's like I can mention like one named Seven to Eternity. That's something.
Yes, Seven to Eternity was one. It's a limited series, and I think they actually just released their final issue. I think it was like 17. Yeah, so it is now a complete story.
Oh,
Don't quote me on that, but. They have had some hiatus, and that's another thing with dealing with indie comics. Is like sometimes it's just the writer and the artist, and they produce it through an independent company like Dark Horse or Image is another one. So you run into problems, some lagging. But here's the actual synopsis from 17 Eternity. To give you an idea of what we're talking about, the God of Whispers has spread an omnipresent paranoia to every corner of the kingdom of Zal. His spies hide in every hall, spreading mistrust and fear. I am Odysseus, a dying knight from a disgraced house, must choose between joining a hopeless band of magic users and their desperate bid to free the world from an evil god, or accepting his promise to give Adam everything his heart desires. So right off the bat, the thing that struck me about this series was its just uniqueness and characters and world building. And the best way I can describe this one is an alien western, and that's often been described in this. With this particular story. And it also goes back to harking to what we said earlier in another podcast about flawed heroes and heroic villains, and this definitely fits into the bill.
Okay.
He's not your standard hero type. I'm doing good for the sake of good. He's conflicted. He makes some bad choices in life, not entirely for selfish reasons, but for selfless reasons. So there's definitely more of a struggle to it. And honestly, when reading this, couldn't help but think of I guess, parallels to our own world, and just how the villain works, spraying lies and deceit, mistrust, all that kind of stuff. And I couldn't help but think of, the 2016 elections and politics with Trump coming in, and just even now, all the mistrust and disillusionment is played very much in this series. And anytime I think an independent comic or any story can use parallels into the real world, I think it grounds it and it makes it more believable and relatable.
Yes, as it ought to too. That's a good idea, because if it's too unreal, if it's just too fantastic, right?
Yeah,
it may not gain any traction with some people. It's just kind of like, well, I can't believe this. There's suspension of disbelief. I can't. It's like, yeah, I can suspend my disbelief, but I absolutely just cannot believe anything that's happening in this story. There's nothing I can hold on to, or there's no solid ground to it, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. I mean, it's just you take any of the big comic books or even movies. I'm thinking of the most fantastical thing in the movie genre, and I'm thinking Star Wars. Laser swords and people in long black robes and helmets and spaceship biles and stuff like that. I mean, how fantastical can you get? Yes. The Force, all that kind of stuff. But people saw themselves within Luke Skywalker. It's like, yeah, I'm that kid who's stuck in that farmhouse. I want to get out. I want to get free. I want to go see the world. And I think there's something relatable with that. And then, of course, you have the scoundrel of Han Solo, who people can see. Yeah, I do that. That's me. And another thing too is like with Princess Leia, I think there was a lot of women who saw themselves in that too. It's like, here's this strong woman character that I never really got to see. It's, she's not the damsel in distress.
No.
And especially with nowadays, it's very much relevant.
Very good.
So yeah, I mean, for those aspiring writers out there, whether it's comic books or just books in general, whatever story you're writing, I think if you add a level of realism, a parallel to our world, because that's what stories do, I think your story will be better for it. I mean, our storytelling has been a tradition since the dawn of time, since we've been able to speak, and they help explain the world around us in myths and legends and whatnot. So it's a way for us to help understand the world, to cope with it, and to relate not with just the world, but people around us. So that would be my advice of the day.
Yes, and that's good advice, and succinctly what I'm hearing, is that, tell a story, that can mean something to people, right? That can teach a person, right? That can inform a person, that can warn a person, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what was it? The old Grimm fairy tales. They were meant to warn us about the evils of the world. I mean, that was their essential goal. Yeah. It's like there are bad things out there. They used it in the trope of ogres and witches and trolls and stuff like that, but they warned us at such a young age in a way of, there are these monsters out there. So anytime you can use that real world experience, that parallel, I think your story is better for it. And again, another tidbit would be to use your own experience, I think.
Yes.
with this writer. I don't know who did this. Yes, Jeremy Opina and Richard Remender. I don't necessarily know their experience, but just going off of the Western feel, I would not be surprised if one of them has a love for Westerns.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even in the title, it's Seven to Eternity.
Okay, I was about to ask, like, are you talking about Seven to Eternity? So
Yeah,
you're
yeah. I mean,
working on it? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, just right there, was it Seven to Yuma? Wasn't that the Western I'm thinking of?
310? 310 to Yuma?
I think so, maybe.
I could look it up, but we're really
Yeah.
more about indie comics.
Yeah.
I get what you mean. I get what you're going or where you're.
So, I mean, but yeah, just personal experiences. I would not be surprised if one of these guys was not into a Western. So, that being said, we should, unless you have any other questions, we can move on to our next one.
Oh yeah, and so that's what I was going to do. You were talking about like fairy tales and folk tales, and probably like classical storytelling or something like that. And then there's Once and Future King.
Yes.
So
that goes back into like the old legends and stuff like that.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of the Arthurian legend. King Arthur, and like hardcore.
Mhm.
I think actually that was like one of the first legends I ever heard. One of the first stories. It was going far back as a wee lad that I was. I remember my mother sitting on the side of my bed, and she would read from this giant book of King Arthur,
Wow.
which I still have, by the way.
Oh, okay.
But yes, this is definitely plays big on the Arthurian legend,
Okay.
but it takes it in a different slant. And I'll go ahead and read this synopsis you have here.
Yeah, do that.
When a group of nationalists use an ancient artifact to bring a villain from Arthurian myth back from the dead to gain power, ex-monster hunter Bridget McGuire escapes her retirement home and pulls her unsuspecting grandson Duncan, a museum curator, into a world of magic and mysticism to defeat a legendary threat. This is by Kieran Gilliam and Dan Mora as the artist.
Okay.
Carry On, I believe is how you pronounce it, has done things from Wicked plus Divine, Star Wars, and Dan Mora has done some work for Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh.
But what it does is it subverts the expectation of the Arthurian legend. And me being the traditionalist that I am usually like, I want my good guys to be good guys. But in this instance, it turns King Arthur into a villain.
Whoa! Is that a huge like surprise? Is that a spoiler?
No, that's not a spoiler. It comes in pretty soon.
Okay.
But it also deals heavily with stories.
Oh.
The story of Arthur, the story of Beowulf and the Grendel, and stuff like that. And then certain people fitting these archetypes in regards to these stories. Like this grandson Duncan ends up playing as Percival, I believe, or filling in for one of those roles. And it kind of happens throughout the story. And other stories pop up as well. So, I mean, it's interesting. It's really an inventive take on the old legend of King Arthur. Just, again, subverting expectations and saying, hey, what if what we thought of the Undying King resurrecting, because that's the old legend, what if he was a bad guy? And a supernatural threat. And sort of this hidden history to it.
Yes.
A theme that I play through or play with in one of my stories that I hope to publish.
Yep.
Yeah. For those who have been following me on Instagram, will know of my Avalon series and the story I hope to publish one day. Having to deal a lot with like this hidden history of this old legend. So I would highly recommend that, and the art's just amazing. I really love it, and it's one of those stories where I can see it being produced as a movie and can see certain characters and those roles. And I just wish the mother is played by Helen. Who is it? Oh, now I forgot her name. Helen Mirren.
Oh, I was about to ask, like, because she was in Excalibur.
She was in Excalibur. She played Morrigan.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I was going to ask, are you talking about Helen Mirren?
Yes, definitely. It's one of those things, I can't remember if we talked about this, but a character taking on life on their own and becoming human, almost. And she's one of those examples where I can just see Helen playing this role really, really well. Very much having that attitude. So it's like, if they ever have any idea to cast her, it's like it's her and no one else.
Okay.
So it goes to show that the type of development these people are making with their characters, and they're definitely going in the right direction, in my opinion.
That's great. And then I've got Birthright here.
Birthright, yes. Birthright is another one that's being published through, I believe it's Image.
Yep, that's what it says. And I'm just looking at links that you had sent me. These were, comics you had recommended to me, and I am going to check them out, especially now that you've been talking about them.
Yes, definitely. And also, I would say to you out there, if you have any recommendations, there are so many out there that I'm not even mentioning just because of time-wise. I mean, Lock and Key is another one that I would highly recommend. From Stephen King's son, if I remember correctly. I didn't have the book here. I started reading. But Lock and Key is another graphic novel that's been done by him. Joe Hill is his pen name. That I would highly recommend, but I just don't have the time. So yeah, if you guys have anything, send us an email and we'll gladly look into it and talk about it.
Oh, yes.
But yes, Birthright, here's the synopsis for that one.
Okay.
For the Rhodes family, losing their son was the most devastating thing that could have ever occurred, but it couldn't prepare them for what would happen when he returned. So what happens is their oldest son was about 10 and just disappears one day. And it follows them a year later. The family's kind of broken apart. The mother and father are on the verge of divorce, depressed, blaming each other. The father, pretty grounded.
Yes.
Something tragic happens, and it has the unfortunate possibility of breaking relationships. The father feels bad, feels guilty. The wife feels like he's to blame. And it just gets toxic. And to the point where this stranger comes along, this barbarian type, and he comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm your lost son." And that's compelling just right there alone.
Yeah.
Here we have, a very bearded, very long-haired, very Conan the Barbarian-esque type guy coming back and saying, "I'm your 10-year-old son that you lost a year ago." And it has to deal with destiny. That's another main theme of this book, and questioning destiny.
Okay.
At least that's how the authors of the book have gone on to describe it. Joshua Williamson and Andrea Bressan as the artist. This is one of those stories where I just love the artwork, and it pulled me in right away. It's very unusual, unique, and I would say even dark when it needs to be dark. Because what happens is he gets pulled into this other world that's essentially a living nightmare.
Oh.
It's not supposed to be something that, a 10-year-old's supposed to face. No. And the art really reflects that. And I've always been a big fan of getting the right artist for the right story.
Yep.
And this is one of the things that, speaking of Lock and Key, that kind of turned me off at the beginning of that, because I had picked it up, just interested in it, and the art just didn't really fit to me. I mean, the first issues of those, or first pages of those, is dealing with a grisly murder, and the artwork just didn't work for me. So I put it off onto the shelf and didn't look at it for years until I actually read a synopsis of that one and said, okay, I'll give it a shot. This one right here was totally the opposite. The artwork was very stunning. The story was very great. It wasn't your traditional story in the way of, there's a hero being a hero, again, subverting expectations and making the hero flawed, whereas the villain is once again played off as the hero.
Okay.
So it definitely puts our heroes, because the family ends up getting involved too, through trials and tribulations, and go through things that you wouldn't expect in a regular mainstream comic book.
Yeah.
So although sometimes, more and more I'm seeing in mainstream that they are kind of doing that a little bit more.
Yeah.
In some instances where they do kind of play them off as, what are you doing? Why would you do this way? And sort of like the redemption arc later on comes. I'm trying to think of characters right off the top of my head. Doc Ock seems to be one character they're kind of experimenting on because of the story. He ends up getting a new body and becoming sort of like an anti-hero. For those who aren't aware, Doc Ock here recently, I want to say 5 years ago or so, took over Peter Parker's body, Spider-Man, and played off of him for a while.
Okay.
And then once he found his own body, he kind of went on to do his own thing as a hero.
Oh.
So it seems like, at least with Marvel, they are trying to play around with those not so, I want to say innocent, but definitely flawed heroes, definitely redemption stories. And this is one of those, going back to Birthright, where you're not sure, things happen, where you question the heroes, you question the good guys in a sense, and try to understand where their intentions are and whatnot. So it's very compelling. It's a very interesting story. I highly recommend all three of these, any ones that I mentioned, to just, if you're just kind of burned out or looking for something different from the mainstream comics, these are definitely ones that I'd recommend checking out and, taking a break and enjoying the storytelling. A lot of these are if not wrapping up, are on the verge of wrapping up. I think the only one that's still ongoing is Once and Future. I think that's an ongoing one for a while. But with Birthright, they have 50 issues and they're done.
Yeah.
Seven to Eternity, like I said, I think it just released chapter or issue 17, and they're done at the end of their story. So you definitely have a chance to, go out, get the graphic novels or the digital copies, whatever floats your fancy, and just sit down and enjoy it, and not have to wait, month after month and trying to remember the story. Just like I said, just sit down and enjoy it.
Yeah, we can post links to those in the description.
Yes, definitely.
People can check them out. I did go to comicbookresources.com. Okay, do you take a look at that site sometimes?
It doesn't ring a bell.
CBR.com. It's like big yellow letters, and sometimes sometimes I check it out, sometimes I don't. And I found 10 comics every fan should read that are not Marvel or DC. I just found that one. Okay, I'm not going to go through every one of these, but one of them I had been reading, right? Because before we had been recording, you'd asked me like, well, we could talk about indie comics that we've been reading, and for me, I was like, I don't know what I haven't really been reading indie ones, but then I looked at this list, okay, and one of them I had been reading, so I'm just going to start at 10, okay? And the one, I'm not going to read the synopses for all of these, but it's like number 10 is Umbrella Academy.
Oh, another good one.
Yep. Number 9 is Paper Girls.
Not familiar with that one.
Number 8 is Ether. Okay. Number 7, Death Be Damned.
Hmm.
Number 6, They're Not Like Us. Whoa.
Well, no one's like us, my friend.
Yeah, exactly. For this one, I'll read a little bit of the description, I guess, synopsis. For those that appreciate their mutant stories edgier, with some of the polish found in, say, the X-Men franchise, without some of the polish found in, say, the X-Men franchise, they'll enjoy They're Not Like Us, the Eisner-nominated story about those in the world that are born with certain abilities, but aren't necessarily compelled to take up a cape and cowl to protect it.
Nice.
There's that one. And that was They're Not Like Us. That's number 6 on this list. Number 5 is 8. And I'm not really certain what that's about. And I'm not going to read. I'm not going to read that out loud. But that's one that could be checked out. It's number 5 on comicbookresources.com's list of 10 comics that everyone should read. Right? Wasn't that should? Isn't that what they said? Yep, should read. Everyone should read. So, okay, number 4. Generation Gone. There's that one. Number 3, Punk Mambo. Number
I like
2.
the title of that one.
What was that?
I said I like the title of that one.
Oh yeah, Punk Mambo. How about I read that one then? What that's about. So, a fresh take on the Constantine model of supernatural sleuth and exorcist, Punk Mambo follows the adventures of the titular character, a hard-living voodoo priestess from London. Oh, wow, okay.
Nice.
Yeah, that's something to check out, I suppose. I could. Hopefully I can. Number 2 out of 10 is Chew. And number 1, and that's the one that I had been reading, was Saga.
Ah, yes, Saga.
Yeah, so I had read some of Saga, and you know what? I'll read. I went to, there we go, Image. There we go. So imagecomics.com, and I'll read what that's about, okay? So Saga is an epic space opera fantasy comic book series created by the writer Brian K. Vaughan and artist Fiona Staples, published monthly by Image Comics. The series is heavily influenced by Star Wars and based on ideas Vaughan conceived both as a child and as a parent. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. I mean, that's, again, it goes back to, real world experiences
Yep.
influencing your work and just being relatable.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was so much hype about this saga, and I have yet to read it. I did try and get into it at one point, but it was just time restrictions and that kind of stuff. It didn't work out for whatever reason. Things happen in life, but yeah, that is definitely one that has very high regards. No one I've known about who has heard about it, has read it, has said anything bad about it. So that's definitely one to check out.
Yes, and that's what I had found. That was one that held my, as far as I know, my attention doesn't really wane or wander that much, but it's like that really held me. Like it's like compelling, something that's compelling.
Yeah.
That compelled me to read it.
Mm-hmm.
Saga.
And that's how you have a good story.
Yes.
It's just you have everyone talking about it, and they say we want more.
Yes.
So that's definitely on the list.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should put up a link for that as well.
Yes, I will. And I'll read what the story's about, since we were just talking about like a great story. So
Yeah.
It depicts two lovers from long-warring extraterrestrial races. Is it Alana and Marco? Fleeing authorities from both sides of a galactic war as they struggle to care for their newborn daughter, Hazel, who occasionally narrates the series.
Very Shakespearean. I do
Yes.
remember that aspect of it. It's just like it's Capulets versus the Montagues.
Star-crossed lovers, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Literally, they're like.
It takes it very literal. Yes.
Yes.
Interpretation. So yeah, it's just taking what you know, taking your own experiences, and putting it through your own perspective. And it's writing what you know. It's writing only what you can write. No one else can write that experience with you, and that's what makes it unique and fresh. And that's what a lot of indie comics deliver sometimes that you can't really get with mainstream. So yes, definitely check these out. Highly recommended by me and everyone else. Not to single myself out here and to say that I'm the absolute authority, but highly recommended. We'll put links in the description for this podcast if you're interested, and check them out and enjoy your time at reading these great stories.
Hey, John here, and I'm sitting with Noel Scotch Anderson. And so Noel, do you prefer Noel or Scotch?
Please call me sir.
Sir,
No,
okay, sure, yes, I'll
no,
do that.
Scotch is good.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay, so Scotch, thank you so much, and thank you so much for sitting with me, on this Walmart purchased.
John, I love it.
Yes, it's great.
Yep,
It was inexpensive, and yet it's very comfortable.
It's
and
comfy, it's cozy.
yes, is that product placement? Did I just?
Yeah. I hope you're getting a cut. Getting a cut.
Oh goodness, that's great. That's great. And so we're going to be chatting about really being an indie comic producer. And I suppose dabbled. You've had much more experience with that.
Yeah, I was looking at your Lash Lightning here.
Oh,
it's
yes.
it's good stuff.
Yes, I do believe it turned out well.
Right. So, and you write, and you obviously have a background in illustration. You've got a degree.
Yeah. I got my degree in 2012 from MSU, and that was drawing. Like I finally just decided drawing because I took that many classes and I just had to be done.
Yep.
And it's not like I was trying to hide in college. I don't know. Please do let me know what your experience has been with school. But
So I used to just draw in study hall all the time in high school, and I would get a teacher that would pull me aside and say, "What's the matter, Anderson? You ain't got anything better to do than draw them funny pictures?" They used to make me so mad because I thought, I'm working on something here. I'm not wasting my time. So when I first got published, I really felt a certain achievement. Like, you know what? Sitting in study hall drawing these funny pictures got me published. So, to that teacher.
Oh, goodness. Was it Last Laugh or something like that? It's like, who's got the last laugh now or something?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, I'm sure he wouldn't be too impressed, but whatever. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I consider that sort of dabbling. It's like, I had been writing comics, and I was involved in an organization or a club at Minnesota State University Moorhead there.
Yeah.
It had begun before I had joined it, but I really did my best to turn it into something that would be so encouraging, so informative, and so necessary for individuals who are going to make a career.
And both you and Zach were in that club,
yes,
right?
Yes, yeah, we were.
So I would
both
see you guys at ValleyCon and the FM Comic Con and all the things.
Yes, yeah, and that's where you and I had first met.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you so much again for, I guess, remembering me. It's like that's great. I'm just sort of being like obsequious.
Oh, you're not very forgettable, John.
Oh, really?
Of course, I get that too. It's always like, oh, you're the guy with the hair. But no, I certainly remember you at those, and that's what's exciting about those Comic Cons is getting to meet other people that are into the same thing that you're into.
Yes.
And you talk about independent comic creation. I feel that that's what it's all about. If you're a creative person and you got that drive to create, sitting and waiting around for somebody to scoop you up and beg you to do illustration for their piece or whatever, that's probably not going to happen. So it's better to pursue that on your own, whether you're self-publishing or sometimes you just do stuff because you feel like you got to do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. For me too, I never really got the whole. I mean, I understand in the big companies they got a process. It's where somebody writes, somebody pencils, somebody inks, somebody colors, all that sort of thing. But I really grew up reading a lot of underground comics where it would all be done by one person, like Robert Crumb or Gilbert Sheldon. They would do the comic book themselves. They'd write it, they'd draw it and ink it. So that's just kind of what I've always done.
Yes, and I was going to ask you about that. So let me just ask you right now. It's like, so this will lead. Okay, I've got a question about traditional. I'm just going to say traditional physical comics and digital. Okay, I'll save that one. But first, it's kind of like, how much time does that take now for you to write, draw, and then eventually print something?
A lot of times when I start working on something, I don't necessarily know what it's for. I will start working on a strip or a comic, and I'm just doing it to do it.
Sure.
And by the time I'm done, I realize that, this took me a couple of months to finish this up. Maybe I want to print this and do something with it. Yeah. Sinkhole, there was a period where I wasn't working in radio. I got fired unceremoniously there, so I had a few months where I wasn't doing anything. So I just started drawing this comic strip called Sinkhole, and by the time I started thinking about it, I already had done 30, 40 strips. So it's like, maybe I should put these into a little comic book.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine, Bo Frazee, and I started doing this little local underground art magazine that was called Art Riot.
Mhm.
And so I was putting these strips into that magazine, and I don't know, just kind of took on its own life. Now I've been drawing Sinkhole for like 8 or 9 years.
Yeah. Yes. And I've been seeing it, or at least, it's been on my mind, or it's been showing up so much. And gosh, when I wasn't as active perhaps on Facebook, and you and I are both like, at least I manage and maintain an artist sort of page on Facebook instead of a website,
Yep.
And so, yeah, I see the work, but for a while I wasn't. So coming back to Facebook, it's like, hey, yay! It's like, it's still there, and, and also it's how you draw too. That was a big, like, the style of the drawing, like in Mad Magazine, that's been discussed in Cracked Magazine, or just Cracked, I grew up with art styles like that, so to see it, it's just so kind of reassuring. It's not like a safety blanket. I'm not saying, I need your comics, Scotch. I need them. Like,
Wrap me up like a warm blanket.
exactly. You said you'd show up at this time, but you didn't. You could just be honest.
No, I love superhero comics too. I read
Sure.
Marvel and DC, and but I was more of a fan of reading Archie comics. I loved Archie, and I loved a lot of those kind of underground comics. There's a guy named Kaz Prapolinas who writes for SpongeBob SquarePants now.
Okay.
And I'm friends with him on Facebook, but he used to do a comic in the 90s that was called Underworld, and it was just this gritty kind of comic strip style, but it was all about this really slummy, gross city, and these nasty characters, and I kind of patterned my Sinkhole comic after that. And I just like kind of taking that artwork style with the Archie comics, and then just intermingling it with kind of that kind of subversive.
Yes. Yes.
There's something fun about it. That's what I loved about Mad Magazine too. It was, no matter what they were parodying it, they just kind of drag it down to this guttural level. But it's funny. I love that.
It is funny, and I don't know. I was about to say, like, it strikes a chord, or it grips a person, and it really holds a person that's going on. So thank you for doing it. Thank you for. So it's not a lost art.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks for looking at it and finding it funny and not offensive. It doesn't strike everybody the same way. So I get some people that are offended by it, but I'm a firm believer that everything isn't for everyone. There's some people that really censor their work, or they worry about what other people are going to think about it. But I don't think you can go into it that way. If you've got something that you want to create, you just got to create it, and how people interpret it, that's on them. That's not on you.
Yes, and that's what I do. I teach classes. At least I've been asked to instruct classes and whatnot about, like, illustration, and whether it be like superhero comics. I guess genre isn't what I'm asked to do. It's more just the creation, like you're saying. And what I do try and teach people is confidence. In those classes. And it's like, if you're waiting for permission to do this, you're going to be waiting a long time. If there's a letter that's going to be coming in the mail, or arriving, right, delivered right in the mail, and it says, hey, okay, draw this comic now, draw Sinkhole. It's like, and you're waiting for it, like, when's that going to get here? It's like, no, just do it. Just do it.
Absolutely. I think no matter how much, no matter how talented you are or creative you are, you've always got self-doubt. I mean, people doubt their skills, or they doubt, what are people going to think of this? But I think you got to just go ahead and do it.
Yes. And take the leap. That's what I tell people. You have to take the leap. And I'm not talking about faith, although that comes up, the leap of faith. But it's like, you got to take the leap, because sometimes objectively it makes no sense whatsoever. And you just have to take the risk or something like that to find out. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is my purpose. So.
Before I started self-publishing, I actually approached a few different. The first few things I got published were some directors of some movies I liked, and I contacted them. One is Fred Olen Ray, who I've had a pretty good relationship with. He's the director of a lot of 80s B movies like Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers and Evil Tunes and stuff like that. And I used to go to his message board all the time, way back when, before Facebook. People would have message boards, and you could go and talk to a lot of these directors I really enjoyed. So I interviewed him on the radio one day, and after interviewing him, I contacted him on the message board and said, I really love your movie Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, and I've always thought there should be like a graphic novel adaptation of that. And he said, why don't you go ahead and do it? And I said, well, I'd love to. I said, I've just been worried about the costs. And he says, well, I tell you what, he goes, if you want to go ahead and do it, he goes, I'll pay the publishing costs, and then, because I can't really pay anything, but I'll give you, however many copies of it you want. So my payment was getting like 200 copies of it, did the artwork, and then that was my first time venturing to like ValleyCon, sitting at a table and saying, here's what I've done. Hollywood chainsaw hookers. Look at this, Fargo.
Yeah, hurry on over.
Yeah, what do you think? But that led me into a whole bunch of other stuff because I've done comic books for another company called Alternative Cinema, and they do what you would call like softcore spoofs of movies. So that's where I got to draw on Spider Babe, and I did the Bravengers.
Oh goodness! Oh goodness!
Yeah. So I've done a bunch of their movies in comic book form, and then I just kind of started self-publishing after that.
Sure. And oh gosh, there are so many questions. There's so many questions I can ask. I mean, the immediate one, the one I was going to get to was like traditional or physical versus digital,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and how that's impacted you, you know. But
I love having physical comic in hand.
yes, and so that's what I was going to totally read. Do read my mind.
Mhm.
It'll make it so much quicker, you know.
Yeah.
And so much, but yeah, that tactile experience of like turning the page, you know, and then drawing it. So knowing a person's going to be doing that. So it's like, okay, this is going to be like, oh, you end one page with like a surprised look on a character's face or like a surprised expression, and then you've got like 2-page splash, you know, of something going on.
Oh, the layouts and the
Yes.
graphics. That's always what intrigued me when I was young too. Just all the various types of art. That probably more so than the writing. You know, I never was all that. Like I said, not reading a lot of superhero comics. I didn't really follow the story arc and the thread from book to book. I was more interested in how Spider-Man looked,
Yes.
or or the colors of the costumes. And I like the goofy comics. The complicated love triangle between Archie and Betty.
Oh my goodness.
Not really. It's more about just drawing those characters. That's what I like. So I would use those as reference, and the smell of the comic book, and
Yes.
purchasing it and having that collectible sitting on your shelf there that you go to anytime, as opposed to having to bring up a file and looking at it. I've never been as intrigued in the digital as much.
Yes, you know, Zach had just sent me some links to indie comics that he was that he can talk about. You know, I haven't read them myself. I've just been producing that comic, you know, that I handed to you. I haven't been reading too much. And you know what? There's a question. All right, so you've got influences, or you have been influenced. All right, and then when do you stop with the influences and okay, I can't keep reading that because I got to come up with something that's mine, you know?
I think that stuff kind of develops on its own. When the first couple of strips of Sinkhole that I did, I was kind of patterning it off of Underworld, but I kept making my own characters, and pretty much they all took on their own. I can't analyze it too deeply because it's all just pretty guttural jokes. They're more just like those little gag bag, 3-panel strips. But I've gotten more to where I'm doing lengthier stories. In fact, I did a full-length, full-color graphic novel this last that I just finished up called Sinkhole Summer, and I did the whole thing as like a spoof of like 80s teen sex comedies, which I grew up watching a lot of.
I did too.
Yeah, did you ever watch like USA Up All Night?
Yes, I was just thinking about that. Yeah, and Gilbert Gottfried, he was the host for me.
Gilbert Gottfried, and then
then
Ron Deschier also, and they'd always have those movies like Bikini Drive-In or Joysticks and that type of stuff. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. So I took all of the characters that I drew in Sinkhole and started putting them in these like 1980s teen sex comedy situations and all the gags. And there's an authority figure named Mr. Landgrab that's trying to take over the arcade. So the kids have to save the arcade, and they have a big bikini video game contest. And so that one ended up being like 48, 50 pages, and and I did it all full color because I really wanted to do it right. Yeah. So sometimes that stuff just takes a life of its own on.
Yes, it does.
And I actually did. Here's what I do like about the digital.
Okay.
I've taken some of my comics and actually done like little short like videos of them, but I can't really do the animation. So what I do is this cheap ass animation. I'll draw the characters and then cut them out like paper puppets.
Sure.
Put a little stick on them, draw the background, and then I film them with my iPad.
I've watched those. Yes.
Kind of wiggle them around, and I put a soundtrack to it, and then I go into iMovie and I'll edit it all up, and it looks like a nice, it looks kind of like a cartoon. If I could make the mouths move, I think it would be pretty close.
Yes, I think so.
But again, it's one of those things where you got to find your own shortcut to doing it. I couldn't find anybody to animate it, or anybody that was willing to do it without a big paycheck, which I didn't have. So it's like, well, I'm just going to make it myself then.
Yeah, it can cost quite a bit of money, and that's what I've been doing now. It's like I could illustrate something, I could animate something, I could edit something, but it's like, some people just need a break. And but I mean, like big for them, it's a big break or something like that, and not like a rest, but an opportunity. Some people need an opportunity, so that's what I've been attempting to provide. So I go on like Fiverr and I go on forums. I just look up animators or illustrators looking for work.
And
so
and I've got a lot of really talented friends that provided voices for the characters, and which was great, because working in radio too, I know a lot of people that are pretty animated and goofy that are more than happy to throw a silly voice down if you need them to.
Yes.
But there's also something to be said for just doing it yourself and not having to rely on other people. If you've got to rely on somebody else's timeline to animate something or to ink something for you, it's a lot easier to just do it yourself.
Yes, and that's what I found. It's like, and again, it goes back to having not so much the time, because if it's a passion or something like that, of course there's the time. It just it gets. I was about to say manifested, but it just happens. It just, you find spaces during the day where, okay, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to do this now. And the level of commitment or dedication to the work you're doing must be, perhaps for some people, really just, I don't know about a mystery, but it's kind of like, it's like, what do you mean we can't hang out? Like, it's like, what? I've been your friend for so many years or something. I'm not saying that's happening, but that's happened to me. That's happened to me.
I do it just pretty much every spare minute I have. I sit and try to grab my sketchbook or whatever and work on that. Yeah. But I play in a little musical duo, and I'm married, and I got things that I do outside of radio, so it is tough to find the time to do all of that.
Yes.
But again, I think it's like, if you're a creative person, it's just about getting it out there. You got things that you want to finish up, you want to put it out there, and you find the time, you make the time.
Yes. And then it's there.
Yep.
And I think that's what some people are just find so off-putting. And with the idea of, I got to get a job. It's like, you're just talking about cons and going to expos. And okay, so with this college organization or club that we started, or I guess really started, it was there, but we really took it and transformed it into something that would benefit so many students, or potential artists and whatnot. But anyway, so the college was paying for people to go to Chicago to C2E2. Okay, it would pay for this club to go there and talk to professionals or individuals in the industry. And it's like, so many of the students would be like, I have to go there, I have to get a portfolio put together, I have to get this job, I have to get this position or something like that, and then start working my way up something. And it's like, no, you don't have to. You just have to produce. And because you do that, and that's what I found as a musician. Okay, it's like, our father was a musician, his father was a musician. It's like, just perform. If you do that, and if you love what you're doing, you will get work. People will say, oh my gosh, that set was just phenomenal. Can you play at this venue?
Right.
At this day? So it's like, that's what I tell people. It's like, just produce your own story, produce your own
heard some of your goofy songs. I enjoy them.
Really? You did?
Yeah. And I love it. So you do the guitar parts and the vocals and lay down the drum track and all that.
Yes. Well, I grew up in our father's music store.
Right.
Okay. So it's like, at working, I was just a kid in there, and then, I would work there too.
Yeah.
It was my first job. But it's like, in between, like tasks that I was supposed to be doing, I would sit down and just start playing an instrument, So now I just do that.
Isn't that funny? The things that are fun that you just do when you're younger, there's a certain destiny to it too. Because I used to, every day after school, I had a couple of buddies, and we would go up in my room, come home from school, turn my little boombox on, and we would make up like goofy songs. We'd record songs. I had a drum machine and a guitar and stuff. So we'd write comedy songs, or we would do comics together, stuff that we'd staple and hand out amongst our friends, you know. And then I feel like all that stuff was like a school for me, because once I got in radio, it was so much easier. It's like, oh wow, I don't have to sit here with 2 tape recorders to try and do an overdub. It's like, this equipment is all just set up for me to do this. It was so much easier, but I had already kind of been doing that before. And now I still make stupid tapes with my friends. Now there's an internet where you can put those things out there for everybody to see. Yes,
there is. And you're totally, like, you're preaching to the choir here. I grew up, it's like, our father being a disc jockey, and a broadcaster, or I guess an individual who was on television. Yes. But it's like, I tell people, it's like, especially growing up in this area too, Fargo, Moorhead, North Dakota, Minnesota, it's sort of like growing up on a farm too. The discipline that you have, to get up early in the morning, to get the job done, make certain it was done, really well, the way it was supposed to be done, and then take the break or be done with the workday or something like that. And so for me, it was like, that our father's music store was a farm, but it's like I was working there too, so
Yeah.
it's sort of like that, you know. And it's like, yeah, I didn't know all the lessons I was learning.
Hmm.
Exactly, to your point, it's like all of that made me ready, you know. And it's like, yeah, now I can just having a familiarity myself with like radio and whatnot.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can sit and I can just talk and I can, you know.
Sure. And you're making these podcasts
Yes.
now where you're using those skills, you're using
Yes.
you're using your art, you're using your music. I can't tell you how many. So I've been in radio in Fargo for 25 years, a little over 25 years. And every morning show I've been on, and every show, I've always used those other skills because we've got a segment we're going to do. We need a little theme song or an intro. I'll go in the studio with my acoustic and I'll make up a funny song as an intro. You know,
Wonderful.
all these shows we've done have had those, or I'll draw the caricature of our show, and then that's what's on the website for our morning show. And
Okay.
so yeah, it's neat how all those skills kind of come together later in life.
Yes,
It's
it is.
destiny. I don't know.
No, yeah, it totally is. You know, it's like, and that's what I tell people. It's about purpose. It's about, I don't know about fate. You know, I was just about to start like bringing a quantum leap or something.
Pontificating
like
and
that. Yes, yeah. Or Ghostbusters. You know, I don't know if it's what fate or you know,
Yeah.
karma, but
Speaking of which, do you think that new Ghostbusters looks pretty awesome?
yes, I do believe that it does.
I am psyched for it.
Yes, it's going to be. I was just talking about it probably being a swan song
Hmm.
for those characters
Yeah.
that we've known and loved for so long.
But I see that it looks like Bill Murray's in it. Is Aykroyd in it? And all?
As far as I know, like at
Okay.
the end of one trailer, the trailer that I did just
Mhm.
see while going to see Jungle Cruise,
Okay.
okay, which I do recommend. It's a ride.
Good.
It's based on a ride, and it is a
Mhm.
ride. You know? And then you can walk away from it. But yeah, at the end of the trailer that I did watch before that feature film, there's a phone ringing, and then
See, I thought
Anna picks it up.
that was Bill Murray's voice.
Oh,
there,
okay. I
isn't
do
it?
believe it was because
Oh.
it looked like Ray's Occult Books from.
Oh,
the
so it might be
second
Aykroyd.
Ghostbusters
Well,
film.
okay.
It's like,
Well, I know the Murray's involved, so it sounds like Aykroyd must be involved too. No, that's going to be good. And then it's got kind of a Stranger Things vibe to it because you got the kids in there. That's going
Yes.
to be good. I just saw Suicide Squad, and I know
Oh.
that you're a DC fan.
yes, I am. I'm supposed to be anyway. Not
Yeah.
so much.
it's wonderful. I'm not as big of a DC fan. I do like some of the comics, but I don't think that the films have been executed as well as they should be.
Yeah.
And I think that bringing James Gunn on board for this one, holy cow, he did such a good job. It depends on what you like about these movies, because it is definitely a very it's not your early 2000s PG family friendly superheroes anymore.
Sure.
It very much leans that hard R Deadpool territory.
Sure.
So vulgar and gross and funny, but so well done. This is probably, next to Wonder Woman, my favorite DC movie that's been made. It's so good.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I haven't seen it yet, but just knowing, like, reading some of
Mhm.
kind of who was being cast and
Yeah,
who was
Idris,
going to be portraying what
Idris
character.
Elba and John Cena and
Nathan Fillion. See now,
Yeah.
like when I found out who he was playing, it's
Mhm.
like, wait a second, yeah, this is gonna be totally very, very violent.
yeah, and then you got Sylvester Stallone doing the voice of the shark, the
Oh
big
yes,
shark.
King Shark, right? Yeah.
And true to form, James Gunn has him, pretty much ripping a guy in half. And it's so well done. James Gunn directing it too, from Guardians of the Galaxy, and he did Slither,
Yeah,
which had a
that's just-
certain amount of gore, so you got to know there's going to be some of that involved. But yeah, he did a great job with it. I really liked it. I thought it was 100 times better than the one from 2016.
Oh yes, yeah. I do believe that was a misfire, and
Yeah.
a lot of their films are just misfires. I suppose it's like
I don't know if it's
they
a
got
port-
everything ready, and then you watch it, and it's like,
They've
what?
got all the money,
Yeah.
and it seems like they'll, right up until it comes out, you're excited about it, and then you see it in theaters, and there's always just a little twinge of, oh, this could have been done a lot better. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't if it's the writing or the directing or what.
Mhm.
And yet, I don't know that there has been a Marvel movie other than probably some of the X-Men ones that I've actually been disappointed in. I think all the Marvel ones always just knock me off my seat.
Well, yes. Although, like, not to put them down and not to be critical or
Oh, we all-
overly
We
critical.
all have
of something.
opinions, yes.
I'm supposed to, yeah. It's like they're assembled. You can tell they're assembled, and I'm not
Oh.
saying manufactured. I'm
Mhm.
not saying
They've
But-
definitely found a formula.
Yes, they're
Yeah.
assembled, and you kind of know, oh, okay, this is going to be coming, and this
Mhm.
is going to be coming, and then it's really not going to end, which is great. That's just like tantalizing,
Mhm.
and that's just delicious. Comes to mind, like the word delicious, because it's like, oh, good, there's
Yeah.
going to be more.
Oh.
There's going to be more.
And DC is latched onto that too. Of course, there's end title sequence where you're like, oh, what's coming up now?
Was
You know?
there one for
Yes.
Suicide Squad?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for letting me know. You don't
Yeah.
have to say what it was,
I
but
will.
now I know. Okay.
You know what?
Wait.
And this is funny because I saw somebody say the other day online that, I'm so upset because this guy totally put a spoiler out and ruined Suicide Squad for me. But I feel like with these movies, is there anything that's really going to spoil it for you that much? I mean, Suicide Squad is just a big, dumb, loud. You know, it's kind of a parody of supervillains. I mean, there's so many ridiculous characters in it. Is there anything that somebody's going to say about it that's really going to ruin it for you?
Not for me. Not
yeah.
for me. I'll say that.
I don't
Since you're
know.
talking to me right now.
Yeah. I don't
No.
know why some people get so upset about spoilers.
Mhm.
So let me tell you how it ends.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. The credits roll.
Right, the credits roll. Enough
Yeah.
said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell people it's like I'm not going to just liken it to life itself, but it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, I know something's coming, or people tell me something's coming, but I'm still going to, pay attention.
Yeah.
I'm still going to experience it because just because you told me that something's going to happen doesn't mean I know how it's going to happen
Right.
in the context of that story.
But I love even though I didn't read a lot of the comic books, I do love the superhero movies. And Black Widow, which I just saw too, that one was
I
phenomenal.
didn't see that one. Zach and I were talking about that
Yeah.
one and the lawsuit that Scarlett Johansson had filed
Yeah,
against Disney.
which I can't feel too sorry for her because I know she's still getting millions of dollars, more than I'll ever see in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But I mean, she should get paid what she's deserved for that.
Yes, and I guess to bring it back to kind of what you do, I do hope that you get everything that you deserve with all the work that you've been doing
Well,
with your own
thanks.
comic. Yes, that's
Speaking of independent creators getting what they deserve,
oh, sure.
I just rolled my eyes because I loved Trey Parker and Matt Stone to do South Park,
Okay.
but they just got begged by, I guess, Comedy Central and Paramount or whatever. They were gonna wrap up South Park. They just got paid $900 million.
Oh,
Does that even sound real? It sounds
no,
made
at
up.
that point, it's like it's not money. It's just you can take things.
They got-
you can just grab things,
Right.
and you can have.
They've been given $900 million to continue doing South Park for, I don't remember what the period of time was, and then they've also been licensed to do like 14 South Park movies. It's like, what on earth? And I'm sure if you're those guys, you've got a certain amount of, well, we've done what we want to do and we've achieved what we want to achieve. But then when somebody says, here's $900 million, how do you say, yeah, well, maybe we got a few more things we can do with this.
On principle, I'm just gonna. I would say no.
So I was baffled when I saw that. Just to think that they started out the same way. They were just, filming these little paper cutouts.
Yes.
The totally vulgar, raunchy comedy. But
Yeah.
boy, has that blossomed into a huge franchise.
Yes, it has, and they're like that ought to offer people so much hope, even though it's so vulgar or something.
It
It's
is,
so
yeah.
disgusting. But it's like, it can start so simply, right,
Mhm.
and then become something that's so huge or so, I suppose, integral,
Yeah.
or profitable, or
Right.
something like that. And
Yeah, I'll never fault, like when people say, oh, that guy sold out. I'll never fault somebody for, taking that, because those offers don't always come along.
Oh.
When I talk about Underworld, which was done by Kaz,
Mhm.
again, I used to read that in the 90s. It was the simple little black and white strip and, pretty vulgar. You'd find it in a lot of the little underground books like Weirdo and things like that. And now he draws, or he does some of the design, like the little storyboards and stuff that he writes for SpongeBob SquarePants, and then that has ventured off for him doing stuff for the Patrick Star show, which is on now,
okay.
and Camp Coral. And I mean, who would have thought that somebody who starts off doing that independently would end up working for Nickelodeon?
Uh-huh.
So there's hope for all of us.
Yes, there is. And it's really it's persistence.
Mhm.
It's just continuing to do it. It's
Yep.
making your passion your mission, and making that your job. Especially when people say, "I don't get it." What? It's not funny. What? They have all these opinions.
Yeah.
Opinions. And what I attempt to teach people in classes, and what I do succeed in teaching people in classes, is that the difference between opinion and feedback. Okay, opinion is a visceral, emotional response to something.
Mhm.
That's what the person's telling you. It's bad. So what?
Right.
Like,
They're allowed to
Yes.
say that I don't like this, and you're allowed to say, well, don't read it.
Exactly.
I'm going to continue to make it.
But if they start telling you, well, if you did this on this page, you'd make it more. What? It's like, then I'd understand what's going on the next page if you displayed something. It's like
Right.
that's feedback.
Exactly.
And that's necessary.
for sure.
Listen
for sure.
to that.
Yep. but not somebody telling you that this is not worthy of being put out. Certainly not.
No, yeah, because they're not the authority on that. Even if they say they're the authority, right, or they have some sort of credential or something like that, it's like, you're only here for a little while, I'm only here for a little while, so I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yep.
You know?
By the time I die, I want as much of my stuff out there as I can. I'm just gonna keep making it.
Oh yes, and then people see it, and that inspires them. You know, it motivates them. You know, as I had said, you know, it's like really self-publishing. You know, it's like for me, I was like, the pandemic was going on, and it's like, well, what am I supposed to do while the pandemic's going on? You know, and I saw some of your work that was just being produced, and it's still happening. It's like, you know what, I could do that. You know, I could put something together. I could hire artists, help them out during this.
Right, and never has it been more affordable. I think we live in a day and age where it maybe have been cost prohibitive a few years back to put out your own book, but now you can go to Kablam Printing, or I don't remember where.
Comics Wellspring.
Yeah, Comics Wellspring.
That one.
Right, and a lot of those companies, you can print as little or as many as you want. You could print 25 comics, or you can print 500 comics, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
So I found you spend a couple of $100, but then you can go sell it at $5 a copy at ValleyCon or whatever and make your money back. Hey, at least you're doing something and people are seeing it.
Sure. Gosh, you sell yours for $5. I was selling mine for $3.
Yeah. All my first ones I were selling for $4. I've upped the ante. I'm going for the big bucks now. $5. $5.
Yes, you get one bill with that.
Yep. No change.
Exactly.
Streamline the whole operation.
Oh, okay. And do you incentivize it too? Or I mean, like, attempt to not like trick people or coerce them, but it's like, I made like walk up and be like, buy my comic book, or I'm gonna follow you.
Yeah. Sinkhole 4, I did a reverse cover, so there's a cover on the front, and the gag is it says, hey fellas, if the girlfriend or the mom is around, leave this cover up, which is the nice wholesome cover. They flip it over, and then there's kind of a provocative cover on the back. So sometimes I'll have both covers facing up on the table, and I've had people come up and, okay, well, I'll take a copy of this one and a copy of this one, and a copy of that one. But I can't do it. I've always said, that's actually the same book. It's just got the flip cover.
Oh my goodness. I was about to say you can.
That'd be an extra $4 in my pocket if I were to do that.
So, yes. Like, how many, like the cell phone bill would be taken care of? And it's like, I just kept flipping it over.
Fleecing the public.
I suppose so. Yeah, I can't do that either. I can't do that. It's kind of like...
Oh, my gut. This Lutheran upbringing, this Norwegian Lutheran upbringing, would just, the guilt would eat me up.
Oh,
inside,
really?
So.
Okay. I don't know if I'm dealing with that. I think it's just...
It's pesky morals, maybe.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's more of that. Just ethics and conscience. And like doing unto others is having done. Like, so it's not really like, I don't know how to feel bad about it. It's just kind of like, Yeah. I don't need that sort of...
I don't need the karma.
Oh, yes, exactly. But yeah, I produced a poster for that comic.
Yeah, that's a great print. The colors are awesome. So and you shot that out. Somebody else did the coloring.
Yes, and that's a South American colorist. He's in Venezuela.
Oh yeah,
yes,
it's really lush.
It really is. Yep. And it wasn't. I didn't just go with this artist because it was cheap or something like that. It was just really. And I've been talking to an individual about this. Like, how do you find people to work with, or how do you find people to hire? And it's really just having a conversation. Have a conversation with the person. Yeah, I look at the work that the person produces, but it's like, what does the person say? What promises does this person make? And it's like, I know now, it's kind of like, yeah, it's totally unrealistic, and you're not listening to what I'm saying.
Some people talk a big game.
Yeah.
It's fun to get, that's another thing though. It's really neat when you make friends in the industry and you meet other people that are like-minded creatively. I've got a friend named Kit Lively that I met because we were both doing artwork for Hustler at the same time, and we were doing work for Cracked magazine at the same time. And he's done writing for National Lampoon, and he's written for Mad Magazine, and him and I have collaborated on a few things. And it's just neat to know somebody else that's got the same kind of sense of humor and is also in the business. So whenever we get a chance, we'll put each other into contact with people if we find little jobs that we might find appropriate to do.
Well, that's really thoughtful.
That's
My
neat.
goodness. Yeah, I haven't. Oh gosh. I was about to say I haven't made friendships like that or something, but it's like, I just share with people. It's like, and that's really, and I'm not saying that what you're doing, like, I need to make friends so we can network or something, because that's very necessary. It's very necessary, in I guess being an indie sort of
Mhm.
You need work. You need to find work, and your friends help you with that.
Sure.
You know, it's like,
And I guess, I hadn't thought about it that way, but the networking thing, it's more like there's a lot of other cartoonists I found just on Facebook and Instagram, and you kind of start sharing artwork with each other. And then, so lately I've been doing artwork for Jack FM, for the national Jack FM,
Oh.
and it's getting to be a little bit overwhelming. So
no.
the guy who's in charge is, well, if you know any other cartoonists that would want to take on the overflow. So I contacted this other guy I know who's a really good cartoonist, and now it sounds like he's going to start doing some of that with me as well. So yeah, it's just when you know somebody else is kind of that same mindset, it's nice to spread the opportunity around.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and that's and I wasn't trying to split hairs or anything like
Mhm.
that. Like I'm not gonna say what he's saying. I'm talking about being like a human being, being
Right,
like
right.
being relational and not just like business or transactional or something. But
Gotcha.
no, I guess I don't encounter. I just make, and
Mhm.
then friends just make, and we don't really say, here's this job that you could fit into or something like that. But that's probably going to be coming up. That's probably going to
Yeah.
be coming up, to be realistic and to be honest. It's
Mhm.
like, as other people see our work, or oh, this person's a perfect fit
Yeah.
for this sort of job.
Sure.
It's like right now, I guess where we're at in our careers is more kind of like, what stories am I supposed to be telling? Am I supposed to be indie, or am I supposed to be like
Mhm.
industry or something like
Right.
that? It's like, for me, I'm supposed to be indie. I know that
Yeah.
through and through. I'm not supposed to like, and again, selling out. It's like, yeah, people are going to give me $900 million.
Then you're gonna.
Yes, I'm supposed to say yes.
Yes.
So yeah, I'll do that. But right now, it's just more one-on-one.
Mhm.
And I suppose more intimacy or something like that, or more
And that-
authenticity.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that corporate machine, I tell you, I think more and more it feels like, companies like Marvel and DC. Well, you see it happening with the movies now too.
Yeah.
They're more interested in just keeping the characters going, and they don't really care about the artist. It doesn't matter who's drawing Spider-Man this month, because they can swap out those artists, and the fans, for the most part, I don't think really care. They just want to keep seeing the character. As artists, we feel like, I love that guy. How come he's not drawing it anymore? But they're starting to do that with the movies now too. I feel like they're saying, we can just put this next movie in a parallel universe or in a multiverse, and now it doesn't need to be Robert Downey Jr. playing Iron Man. It could be this guy playing him, and
Yeah.
and the fans probably will accept it, and it won't matter. But I don't know. It feels a little impersonal. Like you can just swap out whoever to play the characters. I don't know. I went way off base there.
No, you're totally, you just ran across home base and scored a run that won the game to me, because it's like, we were talking about like traditional comics and digital. I think
Mhm.
we're really discussing that now with movies, or that's something you're talking about, where it's like, oh, you could just swap that out for this.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you could just stream that.
Because I heard some talk about not using Robert Downey Jr. anymore. I don't know if he was opting out or whatever, and they were saying how, well, we just keep doing it. It'll just be somebody else's Iron Man.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like, wow, I don't think that the whole Marvel thing would have taken off as big as it had they not had Robert Downey Jr. Because those early Iron Man movies were pretty key.
Yes,
in,
they were.
before Avengers and all that. Those were the ones that really took off,
Mhm.
which I thought was weird because Iron Man was such an odd side character to do a movie of to begin with.
Yes.
They didn't jump right out of the gate with, Spider-Man or,
Uh-huh.
something you would have expected.
Captain America.
Yeah.
Something so, I don't know, so bold, something so recognizable.
But those first 3 Iron Man movies were huge, and really then you got into all of the Avengers and all that.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, there's just something that cannot be replaced, even though it can be manufactured. And that's what I was getting at. Manufacture versus craft,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really, to me, indie is craft
Yep.
and industry is manufacture.
Absolutely.
Or it's manufacturing. And so, they crafted some really great films with Robert Downey Jr., but
Mhm.
now they're manufacturing
Yep.
some
They
really...
got a formula.
Exactly,
Just keep upping it out.
and
There's
so
always
it's
just
getting there.
there's a certain percentage of humor, a little bit of drama, a little bit of action,
Uh-huh.
CGI it all together. And
Yes, exactly. It's like, well, we'll just let that
Mhm.
department do that, and then put something at the end to keep people,
Yep.
coming back to something.
I was really impressed with the new Black Widow movie. Actually, most of the stunts were done like real time with actors and stunt people, and they didn't do as much of the CGI. They showed a filming sequence that they did with this big car chase, with big elaborate effects, and it was all done, in camera. It was all an actual stunt work.
Yeah, traditional.
I've gotten so used to just seeing everything done on computer now
Yes.
that
Yeah. And
It's refreshing when it doesn't look like a computer game and you're watching it like, hey, that's real.
yes, it is, and I think people are going to start hungering for that more,
Yeah.
or longing for that. And I suppose that doesn't make a lot of sense right now, what I just said, but it's like hungering for reality in their escape or in their fiction, because it's
sure.
like, okay, like, what the uncanny valley comes up, and you must be aware of that. Like, what when something approaches looking so lifelike, your brain just said no. It's like what the Polar Express. That's an example. Like,
oh yeah,
the
there's freaky
animation-
looking faces in
it's
that.
like your brain knows, but
That's
it's
not
so
right.
close, so they look like reanimated corpses. It's like,
Those expressions aren't real.
yeah, no. So that's what I mean by more reality. You can just now we can tell. There's no element of danger. There's no threat. There's no even perhaps entertainment after a while, because it's like, no, it's not real. It's not
big,
actually.
big video game I'm watching.
Yes,
Yeah.
and yet that doesn't happen with cartoons because they don't approach reality yet. They're not as close.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you like the hand-drawn animation better than the computer
Oh, of
animation?
course.
Oh, me too.
Yes, of course.
It's sad that everything's gotten so. I mean, that's what I love about like the actual SpongeBob, the hand-drawn animation, and all the old Warner Brothers cartoons. That stuff. I'm a stodgy old purist. I want to see it all done hand-drawn.
I suppose, yeah. There's that kind of nostalgia
Yeah.
and whatnot that comes with it, and also just knowing how much time that takes too. Talk about like commitment, dedication that you have. It's like yes,
Sitting and drawing.
yes, and writing
Frame after frame.
Yeah,
after
but yeah,
frame.
with that, yes, or cell after cell or something like that. It's like it takes so much. So God bless those people who still do it, and I mean that. God bless you. Hopefully, yeah, there's a special
God
place
bless
in
you
heaven.
all.
Yes, in heaven
For the animators.
just for you. The directors are somewhere else. I don't know what.
Where they're at.
The art directors, criticizing or finding all the flaws, and it's like that. I've spent a week working on that. It's like, yeah, and it takes so much time, but it's worth it. It really is worth it.
For sure.
And it's been worth it speaking to you.
Well, thank
Scott.
you.
It's been so worth it. We're coming up on totally an hour, and it's like, oh wow, I hit it. I didn't even know. It's
Nice.
Like you have that.
Well, no,
that
this
sense.
has been fun, John. Thank you very
Yes.
much, and thanks, Zach. I appreciate being on the show.
Oh my goodness, did I have myself a conversation with Noel Scotch Anderson. That just went and went and went. I don't know, Zach, if you've done this before, talk to a radio broadcasting personality or on-air talent, but that just, oh my goodness, it flew and flew, didn't it?
Yeah, that was, you can't even tell how long it was because you're just so enamored with the voice.
Yes. And him just talking, I wasn't aware how many subjects, that he would bring up. We just sat down and just started going, and yeah, it was a real conversation. It was a really, really informative conversation,
Yes, it was.
And then
The
we
beauty
started,
of podcasts.
oh yes. And then we started geeking out during that conversation, and because of that, I didn't even know the Suicide Squad. You could view it, that people could watch it, or that it had.
I was out, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Him bringing that up, I was like, oh my gosh! So I did start watching some clips of it on YouTube.
Uh-oh.
I did.
Well, I'm right there with you, sir, because I have got to see it. I was actually planning on going to see it tonight, but
Oh, okay.
we'll have to do an episode where we do reviews on stuff because it is comic book related, and that's what we do on this podcast. We talk about all things comics. So yeah, we might have to start doing movie reviews of comics and give our impressions of it. Because from what I've heard, it's really good.
From what I've seen, on YouTube, and Scotch talking about it, and bringing it up and talking about how it's a really well done, well made film.
And this conversation was a really well done, really, really joyous conversation we've had. So much fun. Let's hope that we get more guests to be as equally, if not more so, fun in the future.
Yes,
Because that's the goal.
Yes, that's the goal, and we will. I know that there are some people, like Scotch had said, that he's, he is gung-ho, he's eager to join us again.
Great.
So yeah, thank you to him, and hopefully, we can talk more about indie comics soon too.
Yes.
Or once again.
Yes. We've only scratched the surface. I mean, we could do, part 1, part 2, part 3, of of indie comics and, you know, recommendations. It's going to be an continuing, ongoing thing. So look forward to that.
Yes.
And the sky's the limit.
Mhm.
Because there's so much content out there. So much content.
Yes, and I'm thinking of like the return of indie comics, the revenge of indie comics.
No, indie comics do not plot revenge, okay?
Oh, okay. All right.
Do not seek revenge. So, well, it's great that you had fun with this conversation with our friend Scotch. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I enjoyed it nonetheless, and we'll definitely have him on in the future. As you said, he's pretty gung-ho to continue. So yeah, I love to be in contact with him again, and have my say in that conversation. I don't know. We can edit this part out. I'm just rambling now.
How about just goodbye?
Yeah, just goodbye. Okay. Well, thank you again to Scotch for coming on to the podcast. And as always, have fun. And we will see you again on a future episode of Comic Space.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.